Retro City Rampage. If you have no idea what this game is, I don't really blame you. That's why I have to name the video the way it is. It is a GTA-like game, specifically the first two, if it was on the NES and had 80s and 90s pop culture references, so... Law is what keeps humankind in order, and if we ignore the order, we are punished. So what I will be doing today is breaking the least amount of laws as possible. I will charge the main character, player, yes that's his name, for every action he does wrong. And at the end of the video, I will tally up all of his crimes. I will be using the United States laws for charges, so keep that in mind. Still, I have to guess on some parts, and I will be wrong with some details, because I have no experience enforcing charges, and I don't plan on becoming a lawyer. So correct me in the comments, and this video is made for entertainment purposes only, so don't take it too seriously. Without any further ado, let's not try to start a rampage. Our story starts in Theftropolis, where player is looking at a poster in which he can join a gang and receive benefits. So he joins. And that is already 20 years in prison and a $25,000 fee for racketeering. We then get called to do a mission, and then we go into a car which does seem to be players. And we turn on manual driving so we aren't scatting all over the place. And we follow traffic laws, which for some reason do not have any traffic lights or stop signs, so we just slowly follow traffic, and we stay on the right lane, and we can only pass through broken up lines when we need to turn. And then we make it to the hideout. Meanwhile, the police are looking up the criminals at large, and they will attempt to foil their plans. Meanwhile, the gang devises a plan for a heist. And we don't know if player was driving, as he was the last one to enter the car, so I'm guessing he is not driving. So player is not speeding. The henchmen then start to launch their plan into action, and then the jester has player drive in a park, and then some people decide to randomly shoot us, and the police could not care less. So in this case, I will count this as self-defense, because we don't know these enemies' intentions. We then carefully wait for the citizens to pass us while we drive so that we don't get charged. Although it was slow, we did make it through a ramp, and it's not inherently illegal when you drive off a ramp, but it only becomes illegal when you do it to avoid traffic. So we are safe there. The jester then has player destroy the car, and while it is perfectly legal to destroy your own property, you can't do it on others' property. So for the damage offenses, that is a second-degree misdemeanor with up to 90 days of jail time and a $750 fee. We then enter the sewers, which is not illegal, it's just incredibly stupid to do, because there are mutant plumbers, crocodiles, and turtles in these sewers. We then commit first-degree murder, twice on guards, which grants us life in prison, and then we make it inside the bank, and we steal a money bag that looks larger than player's head, and that is 20 years in prison and a $25,000 fee for armed robbery and 1 year in prison for reckless driving. The jester then has to get past traffic and has player go out, and we get the speed shoes. Player then commits second-degree murder, and that is another 20 years in prison. We then cross the road, unlike that frog, and we try to stop traffic. And then the jester goes haywire and destroys the bus with the money in it. And then he kills another one of his henchmen, and then has player evade the police, which is 180 days in jail and a fee of $1,000. And then the jester suggests that they rob a convenience store instead. Player evades the police, and then a time booth comes in, and then player commits Grand Theft Auto, which is 2 years in prison. And then player time travels to the future, but the system breaks on player, and we fly to the year 2000XX, where player commits involuntarily manslaughter, which is 1 year in prison. Then Doc Chalk shows up and lets player stay at his place, while he helps him repair the time machine. We follow more road laws, and we make it to Doc Chalk's house. Player falls asleep, and I don't think he should have firearms with him in bed. I mean, he has the trigger on his fingers. One more click and something's gonna go off. The next section has player dream. And because it is a dream, you can do whatever you want. So after an imaginary rampage of blowing everything up, player wakes up, and then Doc Chalk reveals the pieces we need to fix the time machine, and we can proceed. Doc Chalk tells us to go to Majorly Solid to get the flax compilator. How do you actually say it? We then walk through the crosswalks without jaywalking, and we make it to the gun store. Lee then warns us about the mission, and we do a tutorial where we have to practice using guns. Lee sends out volunteers, but here is where things get a bit tricky. We have to kill the volunteers, but the way I would approach this is that because they are volunteers, they were aware that they were gonna get killed, and agreed to do it anyways. Heck, some of them even brought weapons. After killing the people who agreed to fight the man, knowing that they might die, we jump over some cars, and learning how to stomp. We pass training, and Lee tells us to sneak into a truck so that we can head into the military base. We then enter the entrance without identification, and that is 6 months in prison and a $500 fee. We then sneak past the guards and enter the cargo area, and we are already getting charged for sneaking into the military base. One of the soldiers drives the truck, and I think the writers were drunk when writing this dialogue. I mean, what the hell is I was feel slept? Leave massage me. We then carefully avoid the guards. We back out of the mission to buy grenades, and then we blast through the walls, which is a $1,000 fine for destroying a gate. And we get another $10,000 fine for destroying what seems to be a very expensive wall. And then we throw a grenade at a building, and that is another $5,000 fine. We jump into the chopper, and then a robotic military officer destroys the helicopter, and then player fights him, and we kill him, and that's another second-degree misdemeanor with up to 90 days of jail time, and a $750 fee. And then we enter the base, and we shoot the military doors, the shields, the artillery, which leaves us with a 10-year prison sentence. We then avoid the guards so we don't get charged with second-degree murder, and we get the flax combulator, which gives us a $250 fine and 10 years in prison for stealing from the government. And then we run out of there without killing the people trying to stop us, and then we head back to Doc Chalk's place, and we give him the Flax Combulator, and we complete another mission. Player then learns that he can do a lot in Theftropolis, and we unlock the optional stages. Guess what we're not doing? Doc Chalk is sleeping, and then player goes outside to find player from the future, specifically 2000XX. To make sure that it is really him from the future, present player asks future player what number he is thinking of. We then commit one of the worst crimes for this entire run, where we commit hit and run with lots of citizens dead, destroyed property, and running from the police, which is a death sentence. We ram everything in our path, and we hit 88 miles per hour, which gives us a $200 fee for speed. And we time travel to... when are we? Doc Chalk comes outside to see the players, and then he goes back to sleep because he thinks he is crazy right now. And future player returns to the year 2000XX, and that is another mission cleared. As it turns out, while player was on his time travel tangent, Doc Chalk's car was stolen, and he has to get player to Bug-Eye Louie's to get a bike. Once there, Paperboy quits his job, so we can keep the bike if we deliver magazines. We then head to Sleazy Street and we deliver the magazines into the mailboxes while everything is trying to destroy us. I swear, there are some dang inconsiderate drivers. We have to do some crossing the streets, but it takes place in a neighborhood, so we'll let that slide. And we finish delivering the magazines, and we finish a mission without committing any crimes. Nice. We head back to Doc Chalk's place, and he is knocked out and reveals that a school rival has stolen the ape. Doc Chalk then reveals that it is Dr. Von Butnick who has done it, and now player has to head to the harbor to take back what is ours. Well, not illegal to steal back what is yours, it is better to just settle it in court. Now we ride the bike for a few minutes, and then we head into the harbor, and then we take back the ape, and we destroy a van, which we've committed vandalism, and there's a fee of $1,000. We then drive the ape back to Doc Chalk's, and that is another mission cleared. Doc Chalk then tells us how to find the next few pieces, and we have to go to the Great Game Dini. We then carefully drive, and then we make it to Game Dini's place. Game Dini tells us that his dog ate his code book, and now he is just a glowing toaster. Player then heads to the Impossible Tower to get his codes back to him. We then walk to the place, and that is trespassing, which gives us 30 days in jail and a $250 fine. Thankfully, we don't have to kill anyone, and we can just go ahead and hack into the computers, in which conveniently player's a masterclass hacker. This does, however, give us a 6th class felony, and thus giving us a $500 fee. We then hack all of the computers, and then we head back to Game Dini, and he thanks us. We then will get future missions where he helps us locate the parts, and that is another mission cleared. Player then calls up Game Dini to ask where Doc Chalk's car could be, and we find out that the car kingpin in the city is Vanilla TQ. We head down there and we get a hold of him, and he tasks player to commit Grand Theft Auto and give it to the casino so that they can clear their debts. Yeah, you can tell this one is gonna get messy. We start with stealing a car, the guy who we are stealing from left his cheeseburger in the car, and we drive off with it into the casino. Ah, that is an unforgivable sin. Oh yeah, player also commits Grand Theft Auto, which is 2 years in prison. Player then heads to a building where we steal a bike from this weird owl-looking guy, and that gives us another 2 years in prison and a $1,000 fee for the bike. We then drive it to the casino, and then we walk to the next van, and then a hippie who is totally not so high he could talk to dogs fights player. Now, we have to commit second-degree murder, which is 10 years in prison, and we commit Grand Theft Auto again, which is 2 years in prison. Player then tries to snack on something, and yeah, that's gonna be a suspension of license and 3 days in jail. But thankfully, we did not harm anyone while driving. We then deliver the van to the casino, and we are thanked, and that is another mission cleared. Doc Chalk needs help from his friend Billy for schematics. We head to Billy's place, and we need to wait a minute until Billy can find something. We get the Tanuki suit, and while the game wants us to kill people, I'm not gonna. We have to kill one. Yeah, that's second-degree murder, giving us 10 years in prison. We then received the schematics, and we delivered it to Doc Chalk, and that is another mission cleared. T-Cube needs player to take care of the insurance. We are given the speed shoes, which I despise. You have to be careful while walking to not hit any of the civilians, and I had to restart this mission many times, which got tiring. We head to the sports store, where we have a friendly dialogue. Then have to go all over the city and then fire 5 people, which gives us life in prison. While doing so, I decided to get rid of the shoes because they are giving me a hard time. After doing all of that, T-Cube has players steal a fire truck, which is Grand Theft Auto, which is 10 years in prison because we stole a fire truck, and that could potentially doom many lives. We drive safely, and then we deliver it to T-Cube, and that is another mission cleared. Doc Chalk tasks player to go to Lugie's to get the atomic battery. We find out that Biffman has already taken it. Once we exit, we read a newspaper on Biffman's sidekick, Deke Gulp, and we go into a dark alley, which turns out that the Jester was following us, and he beats the ever-living snot out of Deep Gulp, who was supposed to give player information on Biffman. We then have to beat up some henchmen, but I consider this self-defense for once, considering we are fighting a gang. They are armed, and they are a threat to player. Player then decides to follow Biffman, and we head to the police station, and that is 18 months in jail and $5,000 worth of fines for stalking. Player has to drink coffee in order to stay awake. We try to cross the crosswalks while getting caffeinated and trying to avoid Biffman's sight. We do have to jaywalk, which is a $250 fine. We have to keep player awake by committing Grand Theft Auto, which is 2 years in prison. We go through the drive-thru and we get coffee, and we follow Biffman to his base, and we find out that he is really Biff West, the millionaire, you know? Who could have guessed? We then break him to Biffman's place, which gives us a year in prison and a $2,500 fine. We snoop around until we switch the locks and find the key to the study. We push a suspicious vase, and we enter the Biff Cave. And Biffman is mad. Player then gets the atomic battery, and player puts on the Biffman suit to frame Biffman, and that gives us 10 years in prison for public mischief. We steal the Biffmobile, which grants us 2 years in prison because of Grand Theft Auto. We head over to the Jester's place, and he sends out the henchmen. In this case, it is self-defense for the same reasons as last time. We head into the Jester's base, and the Jester catches Player, and Player tries to convince the Jester that he is not Biffman, but Jester does not believe him. Holy 2,600-gallon gator tank! A terrible death trap for the Player! Could this be the end? Stay tuned on the same Biff time at the same Biff channel. After this ad. If I could put ads in my videos, I would put it here. Player then gets an idea to feed the alligator some henchmen, but this time we are committing second-degree murder 4 times, so that is 40 years in prison. Player then decides that the suit is just not worth it and takes it off. Immediately after, the Jester tasks Player to blow up 8 cars. That is 50 years in prison for the damages caused and traffic disrupted. The Jester thanks Player, and that's another few missions complete. Doc Chuck's next required item is the cartridge cleaning kit, and Player needs to go to a factory to purchase one. We go to the factory, and we legally purchased it, but Dr. Von Butnick comes in it to steal it, and now we have to chase after him. Now we enter a gauntlet, and although it does seem like we are killing a lot of people, these people work for Butnick, and they are trying to kill Player, even though he has legally purchased the kit. So, as much as a stretch to say, I think Player's defending himself, while trying to get back the kit. We take out multiple waves of enemies, and we head upstairs, and we take out some more enemies. We then make it to Butnick, and Player has to jump to avoid tumbling on the ground, while Butnick is moving the mech. We then take out Butnick, and he lets Player have the kit, but this will not be the last time we see him. We receive the kit, and that is another mission cleared without committing a crime. Doc Chuck needs an old operating system, and Player has a flashback about the newest Theftropolis war computer. It just needs an operating system. And Sweat Bomber tasks Player to steal from the local business, which gives Player a $5,000 fine and 6 months in jail for theft. Sweat Bomber then tasks Player to kill the people inside, but Player refuses it and says he has morals. A bit ironic there, buddy. Player then hands Sweat Bomber the operating system and is fired. But back to the present, where Player goes to the nearest pawn shop to purchase the operating system, and we head back to Doc Chuck, and then Player feels guilty for his actions and decides to head to Game Dini, where Game Dini locates the videotapes to the corners cut by the company that Player worked with. We go inside Game Dini's car, and we have to destroy some of Butnick's strongest men. But in this case, this is Player's fault. He goes to kill the men protecting the tapes, and in total we have murdered 18 people, and even if it is second-degree murder, that is another life in prison sentence for Player. We then get the tapes and deliver them to the news station, and they don't show the tapes, and the AT Corporation says that they will donate money to charity, and it's totally not a tax write-off. And Player just shrugs it off, and that's another few missions cleared. Doc Chuck needs a specific chocolate pudding for some reason, and Player commits Grand Theft Auto, which is 2 years in prison. We drive to Doc Chuck's place, and he comments about how nice the car is, and Player just says he borrowed it from a friend. We drive on to Bug-Eye Louie's, and Player scams Doc Chuck of his money, which is a $1,000 fine for financial elder abuse. We then get the chocolate pudding, and we hand it over to Doc Chuck, and we go to Game Dini to locate the last few parts. And 2 new locations open up, and that is another mission cleared. We head to Gorg Rush's and we have to go all the way to the other side of the city just to get a sword. As we are walking, we get sick on milk, and as annoying as it might sound, I just decided to purchase a Tanuki suit and fly all the way over to the cave to meet Null, who gives us a sword with a cardboard shield. And player gets sick of having to walk all over town just to get from point A to B. So player calls up Gamedini and asks him to travel back to the other side of town. Gamedini then warps player back to the other side of town, and we have to fight using the sword. Now, this is where it gets tricky on analyzing the footage. We fight and kill the employees. Then, this becomes player bringing a knife to a flamethrower fight. Player somehow wins, and we hide the evidence, which creates even more questions, such as, why did this guy let all of his employees get killed? This means player just gets assist points instead, and it is the boss's fault for having player kill all of his employees, and he did not give any craps whatsoever. So for player, that is another life in prison charge. We then are tasked to go to the harbor, and that is a 6-month in prison charge with a fine of $500 for breaking into the harbor. Player then flies over the enemies, and we blow up a container, which, for the destruction of property, that's a $1,000 fine. We then get the 3-headed monkey paw, and we give it to Doc Chalk, and that is another mission cleared. Player goes to a nearby high school, and Principal Balding is having trouble with some kids. Player and Balding then make a deal, so Balding pays Player to beat them up. But we get all of our weapons taken away, as it needs to look like a schoolyard fight. We head to the hat shop, and we get the rad, cool, hip, epic hat that high school students totally wear. Player is also wearing his pants backwards, which makes him extra cool. We then head to Zach's Burger, where we beat up the Dukes, but don't kill them, so that is just a $1,000 fine and 6 months in jail for beating up a few teenagers. And then we meet Kimmy, which player stops dead in his tracks and drives her home to have Canadian iced tea. Player has some iced tea, and someone stole her TV, which in this playthrough we did not do, so I guess that's a developer oversight. Then Kimmy says that they will both have iced tea, and player agrees, and oh god. Okay. We head back to Balding's office, where he is mad that player did not finish the job. Player then heads to the beach, to the t-shirt store, and we get another $1,000 fine, and 6 months in jail for beating up those same teenagers. One of them even gives player the key to the locker to get the gum. Once we go back, it is a trap, and Balding is mad. We kill more students, which gives us another life in prison sentence, and we even kill Butnick's brother, who wanted that cartridge cleaning kit for his birthday. Balding then hides, and we get the bubble gum, and we give it to Doc Chalk, and that is another few missions cleared. The social club has the next time machine part, but it was shut down. However, the Goo Goo Busters are hiring. Once player hands them a very detailed resume and is immediately accepted, our first job is to get the car by heading to the retirement home, and we need to exercise the car by feeding it dead people. Now, the fault is on the retirement home for the inhumane disposal. We throw the corpses at the car, and it turns back into a normal car, and we return the car to the HQ. And our next task is to feel on the ion tapper with the ionized root beer, and throw the fuel into the holes, and that is another task done. Our final mission for this quest is to drive to the social club, and the real Goo Goo Busters don't want player to do this, as they will handle it. And they all run out screaming. Player then takes this to his own hands and grabs the Goo Goo catcher, and then we obliterate everyone in our path through multiple waves. And because of that, that is second-degree murder, which is another life in prison sentence. After many waves of people, we head into the storage room and we get the 72-pin connector, and that is another mission cleared. As it turns out, that the atomic battery was not charged, so player heads to the AT Corporation to recharge the battery. After walking there, player sits in a room, waiting for Sweat Bomber to appear. And then he destroys everything in his path, and then he gets trapped in his own trap. And Mrs. Bomber will not let that slide, so player has to hit a button to activate an orb, and then Mrs. Bomber will hit the orb and damage the shield. We do this 3 more times, and the shield disables, and the 2 bombers leave, and it turns out that all of that toxic sweat was enough to power the atomic battery, and that is another mission cleared, without breaking any laws, which is nice. Cube T claims to player that he might have found where Doc Chalk's car might be. Player walks to the police station and jumps into a car that sort of looks like Doc Chalk's car, but it was painted gold. As it turns out, this was a bait car, and player gets arrested and put into jail. Spoiler alert, but he should not be in jail at this point. Player then gets the idea to hide in a box and sneak past the guards while they are not looking. We then go inside the lounge room and we play games with handcuffs behind his back. How does that work? Wait. I can't be the only one who thought of this, right? And then player makes a sarcastic description of video games causing violence, and then does the front-facing handcuff technique, but in reverse, and a cop catches player slacking off, and we stomp on their heads, which is another life in prison sentence, and for escaping jail, that is 5 years in prison. Player escapes. T-Cube apologizes to player about the mix-up, and then tells him to go to Bertha, who then has player recklessly drive 5 laps around the block while hitting the civilians, which has a lot of civilians dead, destroy property, and running from the police, which is another death sentence. We ram everything in our path, which gives us a $200 fine for speeding. After that, Bertha returns Doc Chalk's car, and that is another mission cleared. Major Lee is annoyed that the RoboCops taking over the job industry, so to halt the production of the robotic suits, Major Lee has player commit many atrocities, such as Grand Theft Auto, which is 2 years in prison, lots of citizens, destroy property, and running from the police, which is a death sentence. We ram everything in our path, which gives us another $200 fine for speeding. After committing many felonies, we head back to Lee. He thanks player. As the reward, he will help player when he needs it. And that is another mission cleared. We return to Doc Chalk's place, where we learn that he was kidnapped by Botnik and is forced to do some tasks for him, such as making a time machine for Botnik instead. Angry, player heads outside to find that the entire Theftropolis army is waiting outside for him. Player tries to fight back, which gives him life in prison. The helicopters drop flash bombs on player, and player finally gets captured. The cops then decide that the most dangerous man in the city should be in a game show, where he has the ability to kill others and possibly escape. Player then fights off contestants and kills them. But don't you think that the television producers would have had a contract for the contestants? to sign, knowing that they can die, so that they don't go into more legal trouble. So I'll just let this pass, even though when it's a stretch. After killing what feels like most of the Theftropolis population, player meets Freshville, and we kill more of the contestants. And then player enters a hole, and totally not a flex, but I accidentally did it first try. That's cool. Player must now escape the entire Theftropolis military and get to Major League's helicopter. And per usual, Grand Theft Auto, which is 2 years in prison, lots of citizens dead, property destroyed, and running from the police, which is a death sentence. We ram everything in our path, which gives us another $200 fee for speeding. Player then escapes to the chopper, and then we are dropped off at the final castle. Zombies then come out, and then player gets an idea to make a bridge out of them in order to get in. Now, the zombies could have stayed in their graves, and I doubt there are laws for zombies, so into the water you go. Player then jumps inside of the castle, but Butnick plans for it and sends player to the dungeon. But I'm not sure if it's considered breaking and entering, because Butnick's letter basically told him he could do it, so I won't count it. Player has to dodge every single enemy that is shooting at him. So make sure to jump repeatedly to avoid as many bullets as you can. Butnick tells player to look into the chests, so I will not count the times that player takes the gold coins as stealing it. After checking all the chests, player has fallen into Butnick's trap, where he sends out his minions with the rocket launchers. So make sure to carefully avoid them by jumping and get them to aim at the walls, so that they are the ones responsible for the damages. Player then jumps into the sewers and he runs away from the turtles, and then we have to do a mandatory water level in the final level, which is not too difficult. Player exits the water, and he is bitten by a radioactive plumber, and now he can stomp on people really hard. Player then stomps on a random bystander, and that's 10 years in prison for second-degree murder. Player makes it back up, and he stomps everything in his path. For the property damage in the second-degree murders, that is a death sentence with a $3,000 fine. Player then makes it to Butnick, and his plan is to steal all the good ideas for the AT Corporation by going to the future. Yeah, that's totally not paradoxical. Butnick then sends out his minions and his wrecking balls, and player has to jump over it to avoid it. Doc Chalk will also sometimes hand player some items. For the minions killed, that is another life in prison charge. After Butnick breaks most of his own building, he tries to escape. Still, player commits Grand Theft Auto again, which is another 2 years in prison, and takes the motorcycle to chase after Butnick as he gets into the DLC $$. After reaching 88 miles an hour, Butnick time travels and player falls into the time travel hole, and now we can use our 3D glasses for real 3D. Unfortunately, we're not rad enough to use it, so oh well. Now, player has to chase after Butnick, and we have to drive at moderate speeds, so that we are not speeding, while avoiding the other vehicles in the way. Also, for some reason, there are also explosives on the road, which makes things more difficult. After a few minutes of driving carefully, we see Doc Chalk, and he tells player that Butnick ran away. Player then gets into the car and starts driving, and just as they are about to escape back to the past, Butnick appears as a giant attack helicopter. And now we have to fight him. As it turns out, Doc Chalk was forced by Butnick to add military-grade firearms to the car. I'm just gonna say this is self-defense because Butnick is firing shots in the middle of traffic just to kill Doc Chalk and player. Make sure to move around constantly while Butnick is firing, and then shoot him when he is shooting at the ground for some reason. And we blow up Butnick's helicopter, and player does a pit stop, and we get the light gun, and we finally return to the past, and that is another mission clear. Player wakes up, and we get a everything was a dream moment, but player looks at the news, and he's wanted for $1 billion, dead or alive. Then we see the town lined up to take down player. Even the allies that helped us along the way. So player pulls out the light gun, ready for anything coming in his path, and that is Retro City Rampage. Now that we have beat the game, while trying to break as least many laws as I possibly could, let's tally up all the charges that player has to endure, and our final total is 6 second-degree misdemeanors, a suspended driver's license, 3 years in jail, a 148 years in prison sentence, 9 life in prison sentences, 5 death sentences, and a $341,800 fee. Even though this might not be exactly right, at this point, the $1 billion reward for capturing player, dead or alive, makes so much more sense now. I can't wait to try out the spiritual successor to this game, Shakedown Hawaii, and who knows, maybe I'll do the same challenge, but for that game. Thanks for watching, and I will see you next month. Do 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 do.